Mr. Dan Carter, Mayor of Oshawa, welcome to today's. We're having just an informal discussion on the Canadian elections which are going on today. What do you think? What's going on?
It's like Super Bowl Sunday, right?
It's
today,
so quiet. It feels like nothing is going on.
it's been really interesting because of the reason that Canadians have said, was this election necessary to call? It's $605 million to be able to have an election at this particular time. We've got the fires, of course, that have been happening out west. The pandemic continues, the fourth wave we're in now. There's economic uncertainty. We've been in the pandemic for about 20 months. So I think that there's a lot of discussion, but I don't know if the leaders have actually talked about the issues that are concerning Canadians. That's what I'm really concerned about, Sean, to be honest.
Well, they raised housing and the economy, of course, and COVID. COVID is a big deal.
Yeah.
Aren't those issues?
They are, but it seems that the everyday issues that people are facing, and especially the inequity, insecurity about where our economy is going, how are people going to work as we move forward, their own economic situation has been very impactful, and we're seeing more and more people that have said, I don't know if our leaders have been talking about the things that are really impacting my family right at this particular time. You know, as the mayor of the great city of Oshawa, we've been talking very strongly and asking our leaders to talk about inequity. That's a big part of where a lot of the discussion is happening. The homeless issue and housing, affordable housing across this nation, and how is it impacting the average family as we move forward. We're talking about the opiate crisis and many things there. But when you talk to the federal leaders, they say COVID is number one issue. People want to know, where are we going from here? And Sean, we're in unprecedented times. I don't know if you've ever gone through any of this in your lifetime, but this pandemic is, I think, teaching all of us something really interesting. So I don't know if we've had it. Let me ask you, do you think that there's been good debate, conversation, discussion about issues that are impacting Canadians? Or are you disappointed that there hasn't been enough?
I wouldn't say I'm disappointed. I can see the Prime Minister's and the Liberals' strategy. They want a majority government, and hopefully they are thinking maybe they can get a majority government. They need a majority to deal with COVID, to deal with clean climate, to deal with the economic situation and making financing available to the city, but also to businesses and especially small businesses that are suffering after more than a year of COVID. So I don't think that they debated what they should have been debating, but I think this whole election was all about the Liberals gaining a majority. And I think whatever government is in power, whether the Liberals or Conservative, there needs to be a majority because they need to pass some new laws.
Yeah, and they're going to have, the reality being is what a lot of pollsters, and we're just hours away from the closing of the polls. There's some indication we may not have the results tonight because of the mail-in ballots, and we'll have to wait and see where that's calculated and where that lands. We may get a good indication tonight of who may form the government under what kind of umbrella. But the reality being is, I think this election is going to remind all the parties they're going to have to work together. There can't be this divisive distance between all the parties. They're going to have to come together to be able to really deal with stuff.
Can you see you're the mayor, you're neutral, I'm majority this time supposed to be neutral, which I am. But do you see the Conservatives, especially having rejected in their Congress the whole idea of climate change? Do you see them being cooperative?
Well,
if the Liberals go back?
I think the reality being is they're going to have to. I think whoever is going to be in power, there's going to be a fine balance in regards to what seats they do have. And if they don't work with one another, we're going to be right back into another mode of nothing getting done, nothing getting passed. And unfortunately, probably 24 months down the way, we're going to be into another election, which I don't think Canadians want. I think Canadians really need some clear and concise policies that are moving forward. I think Canadians want to see the parties work together. I think that you're right. There's certain things that absolutely need to be discussed about. I was disappointed that the Conservative caucus, when they talked about climate change, it wasn't embraced, and I was shocked at that, and I was disappointed. I'll be very honest with you. The reality being is, climate is playing a significant role in our society today, right? Well, not just here, but you're absolutely right, around the world. So there needs to be a conversation there, but there needs to be a conversation about what average Canadians are facing. And that means having different opinions from different viewpoints from all the parties is really important as we move forward. If it's just singular, I think that we're going to have division. And the last thing I really want, Sean, is what's happening south of the border. You have to be right, and I have to be wrong, and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
This is a moment that Canada can shine in regards to bringing our parties together and really having a conversation, working together, finding solutions, especially on the big issues like you talk about, inequity, affordability, housing, poverty, the climate change, COVID. All of these things need great ideas at the table, and no one is exclusive to great ideas. They're all smart individuals. Let's work together to be able to find it. I guess I'm an optimist, but I that's what I hope will happen.
But you're also a politician. How is it? How you know more than anybody as a politician?
Yeah.
At the municipal level, but still a politician, right?
Yeah.
How do you orchestrate or even lead to bring about some kind of consensus and cooperation?
I think one of the things that they absolutely have to do is they've got to sit down and find some kind of commonality and things they can agree on. Things that they can agree on, get them on the table and look at how you can start negotiating with those things. Nobody's going to get 100% of what they want. Even at a local council, there's 11 of us that are there. Consensus has to be built, Sean, through working with my colleagues to be able to kind of share my vision and share what direction we're going in. That works. Sometimes it doesn't work in other times, but the reality being is getting people to work together and communicating with them. They're also going to know who won't budge from their position. But I think that what they have to do is let's look at the things that we can agree on. Let's talk about the issues that are pressing Canadians right now. Let's bring ideas together and let's find a consensus as we move forward. Because being divisive, being divided, not being productive in Parliament, I don't think Canadians will tolerate.
So we're in a momentous time in history.
Yeah.
With COVID, with climate. Today the UN is having a very important meeting around climate change and what's preparing for COP26, the climate agenda in Britain, in England in November.
Yes.
First week of November.
Yeah.
So they're preparing for all that at the UN today. As the Canadian elections are going on,
yes.
Do you think these elections would have a role in two things, in deciding what future we embark upon, and also do you think it is that important of an election, and also do you think it would play a role in Canada's role in the new world that is emerging?
Well, I'll be honest with you, young people across Canada are making their voice really well known. They're talking about the issues that are impacting them. You talk to young people, they talk about climate. They talk about worrying about where we're going in regards to climate. And I don't think young people are going to give politicians, anybody that is elected, I don't think they're going to give any of us a pass just to say, yeah, we're working on it. Because the reality being is, it can't be just we're working on it. It actually has to be actionable items. So one is I have a great deal of faith in young Canadians that they're going to hold politicians accountable. And I think number two is that if we're going to fit into the world order in regards to what's really going on, we need to be at those tables. We need to be at the negotiating tables in regards to the environment and what we're doing. And the reality being is, I think if you ask average Canadians, Sean, I think all of them will say, you're a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a father. The reality being is we want to create a pathway forward that protects the future for our young people, for our countries, for the water, in regards to our land. All of these things are going to play a significant role. The reality being is whoever comes into play, even if they are climate deniers, which we even saw through the Trump years. We're going to dig for oil wherever we want. There's no climate. We're going to release a lot of policies that the Obama administration brought in. The reality being is 85 million Democrats cast a ballot to be able to bring in a new president. So the reality being is, I don't think you can ignore it any longer. And as world leaders, and Canada is a world leader, we've got to be there, part of the conversation. And it doesn't matter if your party doesn't agree. The reality being is, as a representative of this country, you cannot ignore the call for action on climate change. Because then that goes to the economy, that goes to the future of jobs, that goes to innovation, that goes to research and development. And the reality being is there going to be a time where countries will make decisions about who they deal with based upon the policies that they've put in place.
Wow.
And that may be a really interesting way.
One thing I'm definitely disappointed that this topic was not more prominent in the elections debates and the discussions and even the policy platforms that the parties put forward is we are moving into a new world order, which is the digital economy.
Right.
A lot of stuff now is going on online.
Right.
A lot of businesses are moving online. We
Right.
moved online. We published
Right.
a magazine. We had to move away from print
Right.
into digital. The live streaming is in response to this whole new
Right.
world that we are establishing. But I didn't hear any of the leaders talk about developing a Canadian digital economy or plugging into the world's digital economy, which are the biggest companies, Amazon and Google and Facebook and all those companies. They're all playing on the digital platform.
Right.
I know Oshawa is a city,
Right.
and it's not the province or the country.
But that being said, is one of the initiatives that we undertook, and we teamed up with Bell Canada and their $100 million investment in our city, was to be able to bring broadband access to rural areas, areas that did not have access. If the pandemic didn't teach us one thing, is that the digital world and technology are going to play a significant role in regards to our economy. Imagine if the technology wasn't there through the pandemic. I mean, not only in the social aspects and the social interactions, but how would we have been able to deal with it in regards to keeping our economy going, keeping services delivered. So I think it's like anything else. First and foremost, we've got to make sure that every Canadian has access to high-speed access across this country. That's a big part of it. Technology and innovation is going to come out of those opportunities. It's the same thing as we've got to look at some basic things in this country that we have to address. There should be no Indigenous community in Canada that doesn't have clean drinking water. So people say, reconciliation is a big part. We've got to do, a lot of movement in regards to our First Nations. I absolutely agree. But one of the things that we could do today is make sure they have clean drinking water. That then starts the process of moving forward. You talk about the digital economy, is making sure that everybody has access. Because that goes to, if you look at the Indigenous communities, you look at the remoteness of some of those communities, it gives them an opportunity for an expansion of knowledge, opportunity to go to college, university, have the opportunity to be able to have some of the best educators in the world come into their community to educate their children and to be able to help them create new opportunities. So we've got to get there one way or another. The city of Oshawa, like I say, we've worked with the region of Durham. The region of Durham has undertaken it also. Bell Canada, Rogers, the big companies are now investing in these. We've got to get the basics to people so that they can actually participate. Because if they're not able to participate, it doesn't matter how great something is online. If they don't have access to it,
True. Yeah.
right? That's where
is there and this again we didn't see discussed in the elections, but what incentives? Is there any way we could incentivize restaurants and businesses like my friend Nado who owns Crazy Jack up the road? He's been struggling throughout the whole pandemic, and it's amazing he stays afloat. But his restaurant and all the restaurants in Oshawa, all the businesses downtown, everything including ours, we didn't hear it from the federal leaders, but we're going to be having a conversation as well, which would be on media from now on, on a regular basis. And we want to have this conversation and feed it back into the provincial and federal level. Is there, as mayor, do you think there is anything we could do to incentivize businesses to go digital?
Absolutely. One is we've got to make sure that the services are there. High-speed internet is going to be there, and fiber. Fiber's got to be there in regards to it. That's one. Number two is restaurants in the culinary industry, especially through the last 20 months throughout the pandemic, have shown that they can innovate, they can pivot, and they can change their business model. Culinary and restaurant businesses did a tremendous job in regards to pivoting in regards to it. So they see the opportunity that exists. We also have to bring some of the brightest and the best to the table. Now, we're blessed in the great city of Oshawa that we have Ontario Tech University, Durham College, Trent University, and Queen's University. They're playing an important role in our community when it comes to the innovation of healthcare and new technologies. So yes, there is an opportunity, but working with our partners that know this field and know best practices across the world are absolutely important. The Mayor's Economic Recovery Task Force that we put together over a year ago, matter of fact, it started in April of 2020, as soon as the pandemic started, was talking to businesses and saying, how do we assist you through this period of time? What tools do we need to work on? How do we work together to be able to deliver those things? And part of that is bringing a digital economy forward. And that's where our economic development department have to continue to expand the assistance with small business in our community, because your prime example of your friend is a very small business. He doesn't have access or he doesn't have the ability to access great talent.
Even the skill set.
Right. So being able to help him create a platform, helping him create a digital footprint, creating a business model that makes sense for him so that his goods and products get out, but also that he gets feedback back in so that he knows how to expand his business. This can be one of the most exciting moments. The pandemic has shown us that innovation is alive and well in many different fields. We've got to support those businesses to be able to help it. That's part of the economic recovery that's necessary, like the federal government and provincial government did in regards to funding and making sure that small business had some dollars coming. And by the way, when they brought some programs in, it didn't work as well. They had to retool it because of the reason that not all landlords were taking advantage of it. Small business wasn't getting it, and it got too complicated. And so we learned through that period of time what worked and what didn't work. It's the same example as you're using. We can use this opportunity, but the bottom line is we're going to have to be very flexible in regards to helping small, medium-sized businesses, especially family businesses, adapt into the digital world. You know more about this than I do, but I'm excited about what I see.
Yeah, so, and the second thing, of course, which we did hear from the Liberals a lot, and of course the NDP and the Greens as well, but in terms of significance in governance, you're looking at the the Liberals and the Conservatives.
Right.
We heard a lot from the Liberals about environment and clean climate.
Yeah.
We hardly heard anything like that from the Conservatives, of course. But as we go forward, and as Canada, whoever forms the government tomorrow, we would know by tomorrow, hopefully.
Maybe Wednesday.
Maybe
Wednesday. But
whoever forms the government would have, Canada has to take, and is under Trudeau. I don't know in the new government what we will see. But we have to take a leading role in the world in terms of climate.
And we have to, and even if it's a conservative government, and I know Aaron O'Toole tried to bring it forward in regards to he wanted to recognize that there is a climate crisis. Yes. He wanted to put a policy forward, and of course the party didn't support him on it. But he said, "I'm a father. I believe that there's a climate emergency, and we've got to do something about it." So if he's the prime minister, he's not the prime minister of just conservative voters. He's the prime minister of all voters and all constituents. And that's where you have to represent the common voice of the Canadians. I believe that if Aaron O'Toole is the prime minister, that he will actually be able to hear Canadians' voices and make sure that we're heard. And I think that leaders around the world expect Canada to be a leader of that.
Exactly, yeah.
I also believe that if Prime Minister Trudeau is re-elected as our prime minister, he will do the same thing. But I also think that Jagmeet Singh will play a significant role in holding either one of them accountable as a leader of our country to make sure that those issues are continuing to be heard and that we play a leadership role. Canada is not seen, I don't believe, in the world as a follower. I think that we are seen as a country that has stability, that is committed in regards to its contribution around the world, especially when it comes to service. And I think that Canada is also seen to be a very progressive nation. What we have to do is we cannot ignore the voices of average Canadians saying this is terrible. You and I both have witnessed, even throughout this summer, don't you think the storms that we've had have intensified? I mean, the level of rain and storms and the severity of the storms have increased as far as I'm concerned. The hot days are hot. We're in September now. It's beautiful weather right now. There's some indication that we may have this very warm weather right up into November. What will that mean in regards to our winter? But you even look at the climate forecasts and the mapping around the world, you can see the major changes that are happening around the world. Canada needs to be on the forefront, needs to be a leader when it comes to climate, because not only does it make good sense in regards to protecting the health and the well-being of its residents and its citizens, but it's also good for the economy. it can make sure that it's part of our recovery.
And I think that's why everybody is, like, you started this conversation with Trudeau calling an election and $600 million.
Yeah, I was disappointed with that. I'll be honest with you, Sean. I just felt that we were in the midst of a pandemic. You own a business. You've had to pivot, change, diversify. You've had to change your whole business model, and right at this particular time is making sure you get paid, make sure your invoices get out the door, make sure that those that are you're invoicing actually can pay you. They're going through economic hardship. You're a business owner, so I just felt that this was not the moment to be able to call a federal election. I disagreed upon it. I wish they would have waited until next year. And it was only 2 years into a 4-year mandate. And
the thing is, my point of view on that is that Trudeau his hands were tied. He felt handicapped in government because when you're going through an emergency, which we're 20 months of an emergency, the health crisis is there, and then the economy is affected. People's social life is affected. The whole gamut of what we know as life is over.
But Sean, the NDP and the Conservatives, all three of them were working to make sure that they understood it was a pandemic and that we had to work together. So all three parties were trying to. As a matter of fact, I think Jagmeet Singh was very vocal in regards to him working with the Liberals. As a matter of fact, he stated quite clearly that he didn't believe a federal election was necessary. Canadians are worried right now. And if more instability comes because of this election, what damage will that do? So, I'm really hoping that whatever the results are, as of tonight, tomorrow, or Wednesday, that all three or the parties all come together and say, this is a moment the Canadians expect us to work together because they don't have enough to be able to afford a house. Think about this. Starter homes in some of the new developments in our community start at $845,000.
It's ridiculous.
Right? It is. The average Canadian can't afford that. The average Canadian is worried about their children going to college and university because of the cost factor of it. The average Canadian worries about daycare. The average Canadian worries about seniors and our aging population and what they're going to be able to afford or not be able to afford. There needs to be a thought process of how are we going to address these really difficult subject matters. And it's going to take all the minds at the table, not some of the minds, all of the minds at the table.
But I think even housing took over as the main campaign issue.
It did.
Which rightfully it should, because how the housing market is just absolutely crazy. Which in fact is not just a Canadian thing.
Let me ask you something. Should we, have you heard anything out of anybody that says that'll fix the housing crisis? There was a discussion about, foreign buyers. So we're going to go after foreign buyers that are vacant properties. Okay, so that's 5% of the marketplace, right? That's 5%. And a lot of the 5% is very high end. Is that going to solve?
Well, both the Liberals and the Conservatives, even Jagmeet Singh in the NDP, they were saying they would flood the market with 1 million homes.
Yeah, but and the free market enterprise only builds 240,000 houses a year. How are you going to be able to? That's with all the tradespeople right now. And you know this through your contacts and your business contacts. You can't find a carpenter or a window installer, a plumber, an electrician, a steel guy because they're so busy. So now the free market builds 240,000 units a year in Canada, right? We're going to add another 300,000 units a year and be able to do it. We don't have the tradespeople to be able to do this. So, that's not realistic. And what happens is when you put unrealistic quotas out there, all it does is get people's hopes up. They lose faith in government because they don't deliver, and they lose faith in the.
But I think Trudeau also has, which I think is a progressive policy, for lease to own and rent to own to be an official way of people do it now, but it's not official, right?
Yeah,
to own their homes. I think that might help. Don't you think?
There's interesting ways that, through Habitat Humanity, you see a formula that works for people that are economically challenged, that want to get into home ownership, which I think is absolutely wonderful. I think there's great ideas out there that actually can be able to help people enter into the housing market. You have to also remember that, especially in the GTHA that we're a part of, a large majority of immigration comes to this particular area. I think it's about 80% of the new Canadians come to the GTHA area. So that puts a demand on the housing aspect. we're seeing now us trying to catch up on the rental market and get rental units. It used to be at one time when I was growing up that you would go from your parents' house to an apartment.
Okay.
Right? You would save up for a long period of time, and if you were lucky enough, you were able to use a couple of the grants from the government, use some RSP money, and be able to put your down payment down on a town home or a back-to-back, or a semi, and you started there, and that was your first house, and then you continue to progress up the housing market. Well, nowadays, if the housing market starts at $850,000 and you have to have a combined income of over $100,000, holy smokes!
But my concern, and I don't know, maybe I'm out in left field or something, but my concern is beyond housing. Yes, the housing crisis is there, and we need to do something about it. And a lot of problems society has. We have a social problem, even here, but in Toronto, Hamilton, all over the place. Those are fires we need to put out, absolutely. Yep. But I think we need to be more futuristic and more intentional and more deliberate in how we design tomorrow, because that's what's important.
Yeah, and if you're talking about what role government can play in regards to creating different types of communities and different types of communities, I think that there's places around the world that have shown how you can build healthy, vibrant, active communities. And I think the government can play a role there. Listen, I don't have all the answers in regards to when it comes to housing. What I do know is on what we call supportive housing, that people that are economically challenged, I know the kind of communities and the kind of things that are necessary to see successful communities there. That's what we've been working towards in regards to the people that are really desperate, that have no place to lay their head, those individuals that are economically challenged, trying to bring up their families, maybe one-parent families. We've got some great ideas and great examples about creating healthy communities and what that looks like. And it's, it has all the elements of a successful community. It has recreation, it has places of faith, it has grocery stores, it has banks, it has green space, it has a walkable community. It has mixed incomes. It has supported services right there. We can create these kind of communities, and the government can play a significant role. The federal and provincial government can look at lands that they own. They can come to regional and municipal governments and say, this is part of our plan. Let's create a community together to be able to help create healthy, vibrant communities. Let's make sure that they're fully connected. Let's make sure that there's great ways of being able to learn. I mean, these opportunities are at our fingertips. It takes bold action, and it takes people with courage to be able to do it. And there's not all Canadians that are going to absorb it.
Are you optimistic after these elections that we would see?
Do you know what? I'm always optimistic, and I'll tell you why I'm optimistic. Is because I saw how people in the early days, March of 2020, how people reacted in regards to the pandemic. It's something we'd never faced at this age group. I've also been very optimistic in regards to seeing how people have pivoted their businesses, and I'm very optimistic to be able to see how innovation and technology has started to play a role. But I'm also very hopeful because of the reason that it's raised awareness in regards to certain issues that need to be resolved. And those issues have really got people to concentrate in regards to the issues that are facing them today. I think that this 20 months has also really brought awareness in regards to things that I know you're very passionate about, which is the environment. And I think that people are so busy traveling in and out of work all the time that sometimes those kind of things get pushed to the sidelines. Those issues have come from the sidelines to the centerpiece. And I think that that's a good thing for Canadians. I think Canadians are engaged. What I want people to do is not lose hope. I want them to be optimistic. I want them to not be angry for the sake of being angry. Let's understand that all of us are stressed. All of us don't know what the future lies, but we're all gifted, talented individuals that can come up with ideas. If we face this pandemic, something we've never faced before, and we were able to address it even through this period of time and making mistakes, we as Canadians knocked on our neighbor's door to see how they were. We made calls on behalf of people that were shut-ins. We delivered food to people we had never met before. Our food bank saw the generosity of companies and corporations. We saw social agencies put their own safety in line to be able to serve the community. We've seen a lot of good things come out of this. We saw children do amazing things. And when you look at children, how they had to adapt in regards to a new learning environment, they were optimistic. And they were the ones that came forward. I shared just recently about
how people in Vancouver, in Toronto, and matter of fact, here in Oshawa, had dinner parties, and what they would do is put a table at the end of their driveway, and everybody in the neighborhood would have dinner together. You know, those kind of things have reminded us the importance of community and really the importance of caring for one another. So I am optimistic and I'm very hopeful.
I know you got to run. You have another.
It's a crazy night tonight because it is election. I don't have any projections for your.
But I think you're right with the cooperation thing we needed. For example, the main thing in the world now is COVID, and because of the economic depression basically that is going on, credit becomes important.
Oh, sure.
He was talking. COVID, credit, and climate.
Yeah.
And we didn't see one party deal with all three.
No.
We saw each one take on one issue and say this, like the Conservatives were good on credit, where Erin O'Toole said he would make available $250,000 to small businesses. Amazing. Yeah. If he could do that, it would be amazing.
Right.
If he's a prime minister. But then Trudeau was the one who zeroed in on climate, without too much addressing the credit situation.
Right.
And then, of course, the COVID situation they all had to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully, good things come out of it tonight. We'll see you back here in a week.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to call you tomorrow just to get your opinion about what happened. I want to hear what you got to think. But do me a favor, everybody, be optimistic.
Yeah.
If you haven't voted, there's still time to vote, so get out there and do that. But please do me a favor, stay engaged. This is your community. This is your country. We've got a lot to build on, and let us learn from witnessing what happened south of the border.
And you're right. We're in a learning process. It's a journey of learning.
We are.
You are right. There's no set answer. We're in the process. It's a creative process.
Right.
Whatever comes out.
Yeah.
What I like about you being mayor of this city is you're so engaged. You are humble and always available. And that's amazing. That's really amazing.
So that's one. There's not a lot of people right now.
I know you have your enemies, but
that's okay. I mean, you have to do what you think is right. And I mean, the reality being is, I have a very strong social conscience. You know that.
Absolutely.
I'm frustrated and disappointed that I haven't been able to solve the issue of the opiate crisis, the mental health crisis, or the people that are living rough. But that doesn't stop me from trying everything I possibly can to help them and look for the partners that can help us address it. But our community needs to know that each and every day I show up, I look for the right answers and the right solutions. I work with everybody across the aisle to be able to find a solution as we move forward.
Well, I think you should feel good because these problems are all global, which is astonishing. It's not an Oshawa problem. The opioid crisis, the homelessness, the housing crisis, economic recession or depression.
It's amazing when you look across it, but it's amazing when you see it. Like, have you ever known a time where globally we're all kind of dealing with the same issues?
That's
I can't remember a time like this. I mean, and unique issues, right?
Even the opioid crisis,
right? But one of the things that is that crisis has been, I guess, smoldering for a long time in nations all across the world. And I think what happened is now it's into a full blaze, and I think it demands all of us. Do you know, in the first time in the United States, opiate deaths outnumbered gun deaths in the United States.
I didn't know.
Over 93,000 people last year alone. So,
that is incredible.
Yeah.
That is so sad.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
And you voted, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. And then I'm going to call you later. And so just as we wrap up, who do you think is going to be the Prime Minister of Canada?
My gut is telling me Trudeau would get his majority.
Yeah.
Which is what he wants to pass all the laws. He has to pass a lot of legislation to bring in the new world into place, the post-COVID world.
Yeah.
I mean, whichever prime minister is in there would have to do the same thing. But I think Trudeau really wants his majority, and that's why he went to elections.
You know, everybody's marking that down right now. Sean, thanks.
Thank you, Mr.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Great to see you. All the best to you and your
we'll
family.
See you again. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And we'll see you again, hopefully in a week.
Yeah.
Twice for October.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, great.
Stay well.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.